We're here today with Sande Hart to talk about the state of the world and her work. This is part of the Planet Project's monthly series of conversations with people who are at the cutting edge of social change and cultural evolution, the unsung heroes, the influencers, the leaders. And so part of our work at the Planet Project is to shine the light on other people and to make the world aware of all the incredible good things going on. So, Sande, it's great to be with you. And I'm going to start out by asking you to just share a little of your story, your path that got you here today and the work that you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you for hosting me. Congratulations for this podcast. I'm really grateful to be here, and thank you for that introduction. My whole life, I've always been, looking in the seams in between. I've always been fascinated about why things are the way they are and questioning all assumptions. So I think I was born with that curiosity. And I think my superpower are synchronicities. So I'm constantly paying attention to patterns, which I have been doing for the last 24 years, working in the field of women and girls. But what really, what really changed my life dramatically and set me on where I'm at today, and it was a catalytic shock. It was, that activating yeast that typically is what it takes to change someone, to wake someone up to finding new solutions to old problems. And for me, that was 9/11. That was the morning of 9/11, where I woke up and saw what everybody was watching on television, and I heard "Gather Women." And I'm like, okay, I went to bed as the director of sales and marketing for a major home builder. I was large and in charge. I was focused on, my work and commanding a major division. And how am I going to get my kids to basketball and soccer practice? So that was my life. And here I am woken up to this new, sacred task. And I said yes. And then I got out of bed and said, what did I just say yes to? And I'm like, I don't know where to find these women. I don't know what I'm going to do once I find them. But I found them eventually through some living room dialogues that were going on around our county. And I asked if us girls wanted to have our own conversation, and enthusiastically a few said yes. And before I knew it, I had 12 women in my living room. And something profound happened to me as I had opened the door for the first two women to walk through over my threshold. I heard, "Get out of the way." And this is so uncharacteristic for me because, again, I take up a lot of air in the room. I'm used to commanding a room and directing people, making sure my kids get to soccer and basketball practice. I was militant on certain things. And yet I knew that this wasn't about me. And that was our first meeting in 2022, because it came soon after 9/11, which was in September. At any rate, so from there we had monthly meetings. We immediately discovered that while dialogue is critical, action is essential. And so we went out into the community and we did countless programs and initiatives and panel discussions. We were part of difficult dialogue series and worked with all the universities and colleges in and around our county. We were part of a couple of reports, one on the Ford Foundation's Difficult Dialogues Initiative, and then I was invited back to Harvard University, the Pluralism Project's report on the women's interfaith movement post 9/11, exploring women coming together, conforming to our higher and our deeper values to make change, right? No longer pounding the pavement and pumping our fists. Now it's about coming together in living rooms and discovering who we are, and then creating opportunities out in the community for people to really, bring down the temperature of intolerance and create spaces for understanding and collaboration. And we put on a weekend of community service that lasted 7 years with measurable impact. I mean, there's still a mosque and a church that didn't talk before, and then we put them together on a service project. And now they are still managing a transition home for homeless people together. This is, I don't know, 15 years later, 17 years later. There's, so there's measurable impact from the work that we were doing in our community at all level. But then we got really quiet locally. Things just sort of petered out. And we started getting a little bit more busy online. Then 9/11 happened. And thank goodness for the invention of Zoom, because it happened right at the time where we're getting uninterrupted Zoom conversations, and we can actually depend on this platform to really put us out in the world. And we did all kinds of programming that's listed on our website, too many to name. And we became the largest women's interfaith organization in the world.
And Sandy, was this the Spiritual and Religious Alliance for Hope, also known as S.A.R.A.H? Is that
we named ourselves S.A.R.A.H, the mother of all nations,
Mhm.
Spiritual and Religious Alliance for Hope. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah, and probably one of my favorite online programs we did in the very, very beginning, actually across the board, was a Passover Seder I did. Dr. Rianne Eisler and I produced an alternative Passover Seder where we applied her 4 cornerstones. And we did this with Dr. Rabbi Terza Firestone, with recording artist Aliza Haga, with S.A.R.A.H, and with Rabbi Paula Marcus. And so we were growing exponentially locally and globally still, but we'd started to change our, the profile of who we were, more of a global presence for women to come together and to create new solutions to old problems.
So were you using social media, or what was your digital approach?
Well, it's funny because when we first started, there was barely an internet. I mean, it was laughable what there was. And I think we built our first website on iWeb, which was an Apple product. But there wasn't really social media like we have today. I mean, we really didn't. I mean, by the time we came around 2016, we were doing more social media and more, those sort of viral thing, definitely not Instagram. But no, we were all, we had built up a network, we had a lot of subscribers, and we were also not only strategic, because it was intentional that we brought in people that we wanted to hear from, but those people also had an audience. So they were inviting their audience. So that's how we made each other better. That's how we worked in collaboration and cooperation with one another, sharing, across sectors, across platforms. I have a platform, you have a platform. Let's bring everybody together for something, and we're better together.
So what was your main message to women, and what is it that attracted women to your work? And what is the message to men?
Oh, good. Well, first I want to say how we got to changing our name, if that's okay, because that'll answer the question. We in 2012, I had been on the Women's Task Force for the Parliament of the World's Religions for the last 4 or 5 parliaments. And the Parliament of the World's Religions, if you do not know, is the world's largest gathering of interfaith people coming for, they're seekers, they're educators, they're environmentalists, they're educators, clergy, did I say seekers, coming to this major week-long conference. It's somewhere else in the world every 3 or 4 years. And there's about 400 workshops, there's plenaries, there's experiential ceremony and watching ritual. There's all kinds. It's an assault on the senses. It's divine. It's like walking through the halls of humanity. It's everyone's in the regalia, and all the smells, and then there's the food and the marketplace, and there's always something going on bustling in this conference center. Well, come the last parliament in Chicago, I had been watching kind of the upward trajectory of the presence of women at the parliament, which has been minimal at best. And I proposed that we create our own space specifically designed for women. You know, here we are in these sterile cold halls of a conference center, and rooms are all, you know, chairs facing the same direction, everyone hearing from one person, teaching them, you know, kind of representing kind of a system of domination in a way. I mean, we're all there seeking, we all there want to learn, but still this whole paradigm of how we are informed with information, even, you know. And so that, and even when I was doing workshops in the other parliaments, we'd always go in and soften the corners. We'd move the chairs so they were more circular. I mean, anything we could do to soften the room. Anyway, I was granted 1,370 square feet in a foyer at this massive convention center in Chicago, the McCormick Center, and also the blessing to convene my own committee. And we committed to raising our own funds for this, and we built the Women's Village. And it wasn't just the space that we created. This is really important, and this is everything we're doing and everything that's so important to me, that it wasn't the space that we were creating. It was the weekly meetings for a year leading up to that space. It was how we cared for each other. It was how we made decisions. It was how, when something happened, we always said, either if it didn't happen the way we wanted it to, we said, oh, we're being protected. Or if something happened the way we wanted it to, and it just always was just ease and grace, oh, we're being supported. We knew that there were 7 of us on the committee. There was an 8th, and we were in service to her. That was the boss. And so we kept, I'm getting body chills remembering this. We kept the integrity of that space all the way through. And, you know, to the eye, it wasn't anything fancy. I mean, to me, it was really special. The love was in every detail. And we had a water fountain in the shape of a vagina, which made me so happy to find that at Lowe's. We had an earth altar and a mother tree. We had a red tent room. Women were invited to make their own crowns. We had crown making. We had a videographer, a documentary filmmaker documenting voices of women. We did a water ceremony. It was just a beautifully orchestrated week, but it was not that resonated with everyone. And I heard things like, the air is different in here. I heard, this space saved my life. The village saved my life. Someone said that publicly on her podcast, interviewing me later. We had a circle set up of empty chairs for spontaneous circles. And a number of times I walked in and saw women, particularly women, and on occasion women and a couple of men, in really intense dialogue. Now, we didn't plan that. We just provided the circle of chairs. I also had velvet benches because you want to have a nice landing place. So we really took care in what we were doing, but it was the air was different in there.
So,
right?
Sandy, this was at this big event that's mostly men, right?
It's pretty mixed, pretty well mixed.
And you had this island, the Women's Village. It was kind of a oasis of respite or something. What was it that people felt from that? Like just a solidarity or a connection with kindred spirits, or?
I think there was that, but I also think there was that which can't be explained, and that was the spirit in which we created that space. I really believe that. I think it's really important to emphasize that where we did it, in the middle of the Parliament of the World's Religions, which historically is responsible for not only birthing, you know, the systems of patriarchy, but keeping it thriving, right? And this is not, and when I say patriarchy, I'm talking about a system, right? It was largely, you know, perpetuated by men for thousands of years, but women also play a role in that. And so I think it was the contrast of the space and this, the world's religions all around us. And here we are. So I think it might have been the contrast of those two things.
Mhm.
Oh, an alternative way of convening, an alternative way of solving problems. Yeah. And a space to do it in that is nurturing, a container that's nurturing for that to happen. And so when I came home, we changed our name because things were getting a little stale and we knew something had to change with S.A.R.A.H. And we changed our name to the Global Women's Village. And that's what our work is now, working on who we as women are and reminding us that we have the opportunity and the responsibility to midwife this emerging new consciousness. This is our work to do. The staff has been passed to the feminine. This is our work to do. And we have a lot of work to do on ourselves. And if we are just going to stand up and take the lead, we're just going to end up exactly where we are. And we're going to continue having these same conversations about why aren't women progressing in the world? I think we're asking the wrong questions. I think we're looking in the wrong places. And I think the questions we need to ask are for ourselves. And we are the ones who have the work to do right now. Men have let's talk about that. Men
We'll
have
get to
work
the
to
men, but so I'm always curious about this question about if you think of so-called women's liberation movement from the late 60s and what that was, and it was very timely and very needed at the time, but how has that evolved over time? How is it different now? And
Yeah. I've been constantly frustrated when I look back at history, not just the feminist movement, but go back to the suffragists 150 years ago, right? And I feel like, are we failing our grandmothers, by not moving the needle more? What aren't we doing? And how is this time? Why does it have to be different? Why are we still having the same conversation? Yeah, we made strides. Women found their power that they didn't have before. I think it also depends on who you ask, because I grew up with models like that girl and um, and Mary Tyler Moore. They were definitely, women on the move, right? They didn't need their daddy's purse strings, but um, but still, why haven't we come further in all this time? Yeah, we got the right to vote. My mother didn't need my father's signature anymore to get a credit card. But the shift has to happen internally in all of us. We have to really look at what Dr. Riane Eisler says is the domination trance that we're in, and what are we perpetuating? What assumptions are we carrying forward? I think that the difference today is we are being shaken into I think we're in this evolutionary impulse that's forcing us to really reckon with those questions. What are the assumptions we're carrying? Riane, I bring up Rihanna a lot because I know we're working with her. What it means to remove the wheat from the chaff. This is something she loves to say. What does it mean to clear that no longer serves us? We have been working within systems that were not designed for us in the first place, and we are trying to fix that system. That's what we did in the 60s and 70s and 80s. We were trying to fix the system, but those scaffolding walls are pretty solid, right? How many rooms can you add? And no, we're just going to ditch the room and go over here and create a whole new container that looks very different. And that's what our work is. That's what women featuring a new paradigm is about.
well, I think it's a microcosm of a bigger thing, really. And that here we have today, what's happening is this great resurgence of the domination paradigm. And 80 million Americans or whatever it was saying, I like that. I like a strong man. And I think it's extremely discouraging to all of us, not just women's rights, but for the environment and for social justice just across the board. And I like to think this is the last gasp, after 5,000 years. And this is what Riane makes so clear, lays out the evidence. It's been 5,000 years that women have been second class. And she really makes the clear case that before that, in the so-called Neolithic times, well, there were civilizations and they were partnership civilizations, and there was the earth goddess was the focus, and there was this incredible change to the male, father in the sky, and all the dominations, the rankings all the way down. Women, of course, are below men, but then social hierarchy all the way down to the slaves. And it's only good for the guy at the top and his family. But it's so, if people could really understand that story, that this didn't just happen, MAGA and Trump, this isn't like a new thing, or even Nazi Germany, it is 5,000 years, but don't we hope that this is finally the end of it? But how are we going to bring about this internal change or this evolution of consciousness is for me the language that, really makes sense.
It's no accident that you use the word language. So this is a really great place to start, is language. And the language is our currency that we exchange with one another, right? It's what I'm saying to you and what you hear, and what you are hearing is what you figure that I'm saying, that I think, right? This is how I project how I think, right? Can I say that more clunky? And the power of our words, we're putting out energy, but we're also sharing with you. I'm sharing with you what I think of myself. I do workshops and I do coaching, and one of my favorite practices is to send women particularly off with this little trick. Pay attention to how often you use the word just, Just. I just have something to say. No, I have something to say. I'm just thinking. No, I'm thinking. It's so pervasive, it's so subtle that we don't even realize it. And then you think about, well, why did I tiptoe into that? Why was I shy about raising my hand or having my voice heard, right? Why was that? What's that about? And then you can follow the thread. It's like, oh, well, not enoughness or shame or blame or masking. And, it could be a number of different things, but these are conditions that women particularly carry, right? So language is so important, and we have to be impeccable with our words, impeccable. And that's questioning assumptions. Why am I and I write a lot, and so I constantly. This is a good practice too when you write. Is that really what I want to say? When I was writing my book, The Liminal Odyssey, I said, this isn't sticking right. This isn't feeling right. What is it I really want to say? I normally would never do that in everyday conversation.
Well, writing gives you the chance to reflect on it, and you're not just putting it right out there. Whereas when you speak it, sometimes you say something before, you maybe wish you had rethought that a little bit. And, what the words we use, I think, what we say to other people, what we say to ourselves, especially, is so important. And if we say, well, I'm just blah, 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 or, oh, no, I wouldn't be able to blah, 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 or apologizing all the time. I notice women tend to do that more. I've had some women friends that they're always saying I'm sorry, and I just want to say, you don't always have to be sorry. But it's, to me, it's kind of an acceptance of your second class ranking. I'm just a woman, sort of reinforcing that.
Yeah, Sandy, I thought it was really interesting. I looked on your website, and I saw the whole piece about language, and the exercise that you were suggesting of of submitting words into alternative words into the mix, and I thought, wow, that's a real interesting twist.
Isn't it fun?
Yeah, I didn't do it. I just read about it today. I didn't do it yet.
Oh, please do. It's time to come. Like as I was writing, my book, I was thinking about, I was writing about Kairos time, the time in which the truth will be revealed, and talking about how it can be voluminous. It could be a minute, but it's the time in between. And I thought, well, that's very timeful. We use the word mindful and careful and thoughtful, but it's timeful. So that's my word. Someone else contributed evolutionary impulse or repowerment instead of empowerment. We can change our language. There are words, kids do it all the time. What's cool is sick, and what's sick is rad. And oh man, I sound so old. So it's like, why not? Let's change it for the most integrity way we can be. When women forget who we are, and we have forgotten who we are, let's be real. We, at the core of who we are, the organic, natural blueprint of who we are, is givers of life, sustainers of life, protectors of life. Our womb carries the water for the next 7 generations in my lineage. My granddaughters have my seed. They're the responsibility in that. And if you're looking at our women featuring a new paradigm page, you'll see that it wasn't live until later today. So if you haven't seen it, it's live now. That we believe that we're holding that staff. The staff has been passed to us, and we're pressing it firmly into the flesh of humanity, saying, "Mother's here. There's no rank or vigor. It's not. We're not. There's no hierarchy here. We're just saying, Mother's here." And we need Father to join us too, and balance, like the bird of any wings of any bird have to be balanced to fly. Can I ask you a question, Roger?
I guess that's okay.
You can say no.
I'm just
I'd
kidding.
like to have this conversation about men. Like, what are you noticing in conversations with men? Do they feel left out of this women's movement? What are you hearing?
Well, I live in a bubble world. I work with a lot of wonderful men, the Kurt Johnsons and Charles Bettertons, and so my observation is there are a lot of men fully comprehending partnership and working in partnership. And as I said, I mostly get to work with them. Then I just look out at the mainstream world, and I don't know where we are with the trends. I know that I live in the little slice of the 1%, 5%, 10%, or whatever of the population. I always have. I've always known I'm not typical, and my world is not typical. So obviously, some men feel very threatened. There is this backlash that even some women just want the security of a strong man, just tell me what to do kind of thing, or the church, just do what the priest says, or that appeals to people. And I haven't figured that one out. Why? Whereas, our whole agenda, my dream for humanity is fully empowered people that think for themselves and have freedom. They're not taking orders or ranked in some way where they know they're below someone else. So, yeah, but I think men are a very critical piece of this now. And I think what bringing the women into their fully honored place as the bringers of life will require the men to be on board with that. Because right now the men have the big guns and the weapons and the violence and even the physical prowess to oppress this, and that's what's happened for 5,000 years. So growing partnership consciousness in men, I think, is terribly important.
I think it's yes, I agree, and thank you for that. I love your answer, and that we are at this precipice, right? We are at the planets are aligned for this, even, right? Where anytime there's a shift of an era of ethos, we see this evolutionary consciousness, right? We start thinking more broadly, our brains start changing even. And at the same time, the resistance holds on. Resistance is going to hold on with everything it's got. It's going to hold on to that power with everything it's got. And it couldn't get a whole lot more exaggerated than we're seeing out in the world right now. I hope it doesn't get worse, but we're seeing it play out. What a fascinating time to be alive. And what an important time to be a man and, to be here in general, especially being a man and reckoning with that. What are these things that are coming up for men and, honoring that divine feminine. I'm recently, I'm in the middle of reading this book right now, but been doing some study on solar light, lunar light by Howard Teich. Teich. Fascinating. What he's done is kind of shifted our understanding of divine feminine, divine masculine still are dualities, right? There's still a man with divine feminine and a woman with divine masculine, or a woman who operates in the feminine and a man who operates in the masculine. Yet you can be a man with solar light and lunar light, and it has a different meaning, but it still accomplishes the same thing. It just blurs the edges and doesn't create, and also you're not using charged words. You don't have to explain, it's divine feminine, not feminine, and when we talk about the divine feminine, we have to qualify that it's not only women. Right?
Yeah, I like that. Solar light, lunar light. I like that a lot. And that's back to language, what works and what's polarizing to people. And yeah, I think it's all good news for men if you could really comprehend what partnership means. You're not losing anything. We're all better together, right? And the fact that men can fully have these feminine qualities, it's just all enculturation. We've just had all this pounded into us about what women are supposed to do and look like and behave like, and likewise for men. And the media has made it all the worse. And I think there's still an awful lot. The mainstream media is still very powerful, just in reinforcing all these cultural bondage, really. And so breaking away and embrace your feminine is my message to men. It's great. It will serve you. It will help you. And for women, embrace your masculine. But this is what, to me, in my study and my work, I'm very influenced by Jean Gebser, who was the person who first introduced the idea of the integral consciousness in 1932, actually. And it's since been kind of co-opted into other things. But he talked about these evolutionary stages in the development of consciousness, like the mythical and the magical and the mental, and then the integral. And his notion of that is this consciousness that brings everything together, the masculine and the feminine and the magical and the mythical and the mental. It's not that we go through these stages and come out of them and we're done with them. No, we just keep adding on until finally now we're ready to integrate it all. And that to me is just sort of, and that's what partnership consciousness is basically, is just that, bringing it together.
Yeah, we were struggling with some language in our organization, and it came up, changing our history. And it's like, no, first of all, we can't change our history. We don't want to. It got us to where we are. But moving forward, here's a new word for the evolutionary dictionary: our story. One word, our story. It's not her story, which I know a lot of women's organizations like to use. No, this is our story, because when women accept who we are and our responsibility and our privileges as being a biological woman, that we're not here to heal we have to start with healing ourselves, but our end game is supporting all of humanity. We know when we heal ourselves, everything else will correct. It'll be unfathomable to have an imbalanced world. It'll be unfathomable that anybody strikes a child. It'll be unfathomable that anybody would raise a gun to anyone else. It would be unfathomable not to feed somebody who's hungry. We just have to, we don't just, we get the opportunity to change how we think about things, because these times are asking us to change how we think about things, clearly. We did a program called Death Throes of Patriarchy. And there's a quote that I'll butcher it. I'll just say the first line, that these are the death throes of patriarchy, like the thrashing tail of a dying dinosaur. And that's what we're seeing. We're seeing that dinosaur just thump that big tail everywhere and try to smash as many folks as he can, or they can. Not getting political, but you know what I'm saying? It's like it's happening all around the world too, not just here. Yeah.
I want to pause maybe for Bo or Karuna to
Please
say anything.
You both are stunning.
Well, one thing that comes to mind for me, and the beauty of being a woman, and the strength that we hold, is our capacity to be able to talk from the heart. And I think men are not reinforced for that early on. So our capacity for language is much wider. And therefore, the impact of change related to that is bigger. And it occurs to me, with my experience in life, is if I go back to the power of the heart message in raising my children, in relationships, friendships, other relationships, that seems to bring about a connection quicker and partnership quicker. So I'm just throwing that out to see what you'd say.
I love it.
And there's a just.
I didn't say
throwing it out.
There's a
I am throwing it out, but that's what comes to mind. But I'm interested in Karuna too. What do you have to say?
Hey, well, I feel so cozy here listening to you all, and just feeling into the essences of what is it that could influence. They seem to love influencers these days. They love impact. And so what my answer to that is, can I take the responsibility to show up for myself by practicing in the early morning hours when it's not so convenient for, for the typical scheduling of a day, and challenging myself with the simple things like, self-care and self-love. Meditation helps. And then just sort of leaving it to nature to guide us in a way in which it will continue to protect us and allow us to listen more deeply, to bring answers to the surface that might not be as familiar as we're even, sharing them with each other, but there's something about it that we relate to, and we're able to communicate softer and more terms that are inventing themselves as we speak. I'm really terminating the ideas of the past. I see how uncomfortable it feels to, I've seen how uncomfortable it is to be in situations where you don't really feel cozy. And I'll use that word because it kind of is a sample word of how we want to feel in any situation. So when Sandy, you were talking about going to the parliament, the patriotic systems of the parliament, and bringing the red tent and bringing this village, this global women's village, I was thinking at that time I was listening to you that that probably most likely made women feel comfortable, more comfortable than being in. I was at the parliament with you as well and others, and in Toronto, and to go into bigger auditoriums and hear the patriarch side of the parliament, and then to go into an environment where I'm leading or teaching, a workshop on love and meditation, and I have a musician, and it's just such a different vibration. I'm praying that that will bring more voices, women's voices, men's voices, into a place where they can choose what they actually want to spend their time doing, just like we choose to get up early before the sun rises because it's an angle that will help our consciousness realize that we're pretty darn hard on ourselves. So we have to use these angles, triangles, these formulas, as Sandy's talking about reinventing the language wheel, to understand that they are actually revising themselves, just like if you were to use a physical body in the glandular system and you breathed a specific breath, that breath would change your glandular system. You would need not medicate, you wouldn't need to do anything. And it is not on a timeline. So it's irrelevant to how you think you're going to plan your day or how you gonna, be worked out for you in a calendar. You can show up on time, but what comes through is really for us. I see so many people repeating themselves daily. It's the echo chamber of the uncomfortableness of listening and being still, and just I feel, that is coming in more in the Aquarian age now. And instead of, that whole I know what I'm going to do agenda, when people ask me, what's your plan? I kind of have a wonderful giggle and just say, yes, what is the plan? What is the grand plan of it all? What's that's what I'm interested in.
Can I reflect? Do you mind if I reflect to that, Roger?
Please.
I love what you both said so much. First, Karuna, first thing you said was, what is my responsibility? I think that is the most important, potent question we all should be asking ourselves. What's our responsibility to this emerging new consciousness? What's my responsibility to myself and listening to my body? And I love how you brought this to our body, which is what Bo actually started with, was this, our heart, right? We can speak from our heart, where, as women, more easily, because we've been enculturated that way. My daughter is raising our grandson, her son, with, just like she's raising her daughters. As a matter of fact, they're both strong and powerful, and they have an opinion, and they're listened to deeply, and they're sweet, and they're kind, and they're loving. And he loves pink balloons, and my granddaughter loves blue balloons. So it's like as subtle and or maybe as obvious as that is, it's important enough to pay attention to, that this generation is raising a more kind and gentle. We're still going to have that conflict. There's still going to be that out in the world. But body, and understanding how our breath impacts our body. I also want, Roger, we were talking about 5,000 years of these systems that have, it's just a slow drip on our psyche and our soul. And I have a friend, Dale Allen. She's actually one of the founding architects of our organization. Karuna's met her. And she wrote a book called In Our Right Minds. And she talks about the right and left brain hemisphere and how it has been changed over time, where we went from, we need our right brain for, observing, and where we use for the arts and language, and where our left brain is all about reading and, and processing information. But here we're processing it through our eyes and down to our heart. And so our right brain has really taken a hit. And so there's studies about the right left brain hemisphere, coming back into balance now. So it's a fascinating conversation that clearly can't speak intelligently about. But body intelligence and how, that's another duality that is not a reality. We are connected to our body and how we breathe and how we sit and how we think and how it impacts everything, where it's all one big system. Yeah. So so coming back around to women featuring a new paradigm, it starts with, what is my responsibility as a woman?
Yep.
Yeah, to midwife this new.
Sandy, just to add to the right left hemisphere of the brain, because I teach so much about the right left hemisphere of the brain in the Kundalini yoga and in the science of the mind. We have 81 facets, we have 29 projections, and we have nine aspects. And so if we only knew that we were so amazingly complicated, mindfully generated, loving, compassionate human beings, we would be blown away. And the right side you were talking about of the brain relates to the left side of the body. And what's the left? The divine feminine. What's the right? The divine masculine, the left brain, the left hemisphere. So we're so incredible. Our fingertips are the tattvas. They're the earth, wind, fire, water, ether. We're just like so connected to nature. And, and the four-legged, the winged ones, the plant kingdom, and all those that creep and crawl and fly. Like a child that sees something for the first time, a little spider even, or a chipmunk, or the awe, the aha is what we get in the breath as adults. We are so valuable and so present and ready that we cannot reference the past any longer as it was then. We have to really step in and sink our feet into that mud, so that those lotus petals open up eventually and grow. And I know, Sandy, don't you agree that people, and Roger and Bo, that it gets uncomfortable? The silence gets so uncomfortable for people that and why? Why is that so uncomfortable, to be still and silent and loving? And the birds, just fly by. And actually the birds come up to you, they, in that silence.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's so beautifully put. Yeah. It's important. You speak such truth to power, and we are nature. That simple. And thank you, and forgive me, I should have had you explain the left brain hemisphere.
Oh no, and the
Not my
hemisphere.
lane.
But you know, when I was speaking about the glandular system, we don't make these changes. It makes the changes. When your body will look completely different by not going on a massive diet. Just with breath, what you spoke of, just by balancing right, left hemisphere of the brain.
Mhm. Yeah.
Sandy, you brought up younger generation grandkids and the way your grandchildren are being raised. And I think it's interesting to think about young people. And I really have a sense of we used to call them indigo children and those kind of things, that there's like these new, more evolved beings coming into the world. And that's very promising to me. That's really good news. I wonder how much you can change people past a certain age. Really, a lot of people just sort of get crystallized into habits and all the stuff they've been enculturated into. Like that, you're not going to change them, or very unlikely. But working with the young people, and maybe they don't. Maybe we just need to get out of their way. What do you think about
We
that?
absolutely do have to get out of their way. We absolutely do. And we'll be there if they ask for advice or we see them falling down to hurt themselves. But yeah, I really appreciate you saying that. And also, yeah, we can't try to say, we can provide, we can share wisdom, but we can't try to make anybody change because it's all part of the balance. And who's to say my way is right? Maybe them staying in their stagnant, crystallized or freeze-dried state is really what their soul's path is right now. So, it doesn't take that much to tip a culture. It really doesn't. It's nothing more than a collective agreement by a critical mass. We have a critical mass, and I think we're learning how to use our voice, and we're coming into this. And right now, we are here to provide that container for women who are accepting their responsibility to midwife the future for a new paradigm. That's what we are. That's that's our main cell.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you're right. And in kids, indigo or not, they're just wired differently. Their information, we used to get, generation used to be, 9 years, 10 years, something like that. I guess the genre of music. You can measure a generation generally by genre of music even, or close enough to that. Now it's like every few days it seems things are changing. I see them coming in, they're fed information, they're shaped differently. So it's a really, really interesting time to be alive. I can't say that too many times.
Yeah. Could you say a little about your book and kind of what the main premise is of that, about the liminal, right? The in between space and
The Liminal Odyssey, it's actually a teaching memoir, which I just came to learn that is the genre. And happy we just won. I just won. I'm so used to saying we. I don't like to do much alone, but I did like to write this. Just won the Nautilus Award, which was really breathtaking, and I have a little humbling to share, but I always do. And it's a teaching memoir, which I set out to tell a single story about this wild experience that happened to me in 1982 at a no nukes rally amongst 100,000 people. And I started really thinking about what was really going on inside of me at that time. And so I wrote about the sacred art of listening, because that's what I discovered what I was really doing as I was listening. And because I've done workshops and I've been studying in the field of listening, that I knew a little enough to write about it. And then out came this other story. And before I knew it, I had 11 of my own personal stories that were pretty fantastic. And they're each anchored in a different philosophy or methodology or philosophy or indigenous wisdom that really made sense of that experience for me. So that's the Liminal Odyssey. And
when did it come out? What year?
2022.
Okay.
think 2022. Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, so book clubs are surprising me. And I've been in a study group for 3 years now, which I didn't intend on leading. Yeah, so it's got its own legs, right? And yeah, someone wrote the music for me for the album, Jerry Littlejohn. She's a Native American flute maker, and I asked if I can use one of her songs to kind of thread the audio tape through the audio, through the chapters of the audio book. And she said, "Send me your book." And I sent it to her, and she goes, "I'm just going to have to create a whole album for this." So she wrote 11 songs, 12 songs, and she even had to create a new pipe. She's a Native American pipe maker too, flute maker, Native American flute player. And she actually made a flute because it wasn't in the right gene key that she needed for the energy of that chapter.
Wow,
So
that's great.
it's taken off in so many wild directions.
Yeah, that's really amazing.
I just set out to tell one little story. Yeah.
Well, it sounds like it was meant to be, and it's a gift to the world.
Thanks. Yeah, that was really my therapy. It was really my path to self-realization. I think everybody should write a book, whether or not you think you can or not. I said I don't know how to write, and I'm a writer now. So
You became.
I became yeah, I guess it was in there all along.
Any thoughts about Rian and how her work has impacted you, or what do you think it's the world needs right now? And
Yes,
what does Rian mean to you?
She is what the world needs right now. She's a treasure, friend or not. She's a treasure to us living, to be alive at the same time as her, to be in conversations with her, to work directly with her or be in her audience, to hear directly from her. There's something so significant about Rian. She is possibly not only for me the most brilliant. I've written with her, and I think she's not shy about saying she's 93 years old publicly, so I'm going to say it. And I'd brag about that if I were her anyway. I've written with her. She is so sharp. I'm like, "Whoa, what? Where are you? I don't know where you are on the page." She is so sharp and wicked smart. She's brilliant, of course. She's brilliant. And her vision for the world is so clear to understand. It's so clear to understand. I would say that The Chalice and the Blade is really what brought her attention. My favorite book of hers is Sacred Pleasure. She knows that. But throughout all of her books, she threads through the same foundational message about, our responsibility of humanity to change the story. Her Center for Partnership Studies Systems, I beg your pardon, is founded on the 4 cornerstones. And her 4 cornerstones are family and childhood relations, gender relations, I know I'm getting this wrong, economic relations, and narrative and language. And again, narrative and language, we've talked about that, is so foundational and important. So she just has her finger on the pulse of what's gotten us here and what's necessary to evolve us out and wake us up out of this domination trance. Yeah.
Yeah, well, there's a group around her that is formed with the intention of getting her work out into the world more powerfully, and like that's almost like all we need to do. I mean, that's the blueprint for the new paradigm. And so as I've had my own work, I wrote a book about the evolution of consciousness and founded this organization, but more and more I keep coming back. It really comes down to partnership consciousness, and recognizing domination. And that's what, I think people think of domination, Adolf Hitler, Donald Trump, or whatever, but in lots of little ways throughout our lives, I think anytime you look down on someone, you think you're better. It's about ranking, really. And the men ranked over women is at the core of it, because that involves 50% of the population. but it's, we do rankings all the time. We make these judgments, or we put ourselves below someone else. We accept our lower position, and then we have to look down on someone else. So it's just so infused everywhere.
Oh,
And I see the only way of changing it is through media, through actually showing the stories in our popular films and whatever is, reaching people, to show people acting in this new way.
yeah. That's so true. And yeah. And so our theory of change at the Global Women's Village is that we're transitioning from normalized systems of domination. Normalized meaning everything you just said, that it's pervasive. We don't even realize
Yeah.
it. When I walk into a room, I'm checking out what she's wearing, and I'm immediately subconsciously, like implicit, explicit bias, it still exists inside of me, even though I know differently and I think differently. And I can see, hey, there's a sister, and what a lovely woman. I still might have these thoughts in my head and deep in my soul, perhaps even because this is the conditioning we've had for our own survival, actually. So it makes sense why those conditions exist. So how do we practice our way out of them? And that's where I bring up language. And also, like you said, in media, and you're putting language into media, then, bam, it's so important. So our theory of changes from normalized systems of domination to actualized systems of partnership, and the steps to take that we're planning on taking in between.
Yeah.
And so our goal is normalized systems of partnership. I'm so glad you brought that up.
Well, the actualized part I like. That, to me, what that says is we're going to put it into practice in the world. It's going to actually be true. And so I think gathering evidence and stories of partnership, and I, in my history, have some really great ones. I just wrote a blog about from my teaching days, which was, my teaching was always based on partnership, and it was before I ever knew of Rion's work. So I think there's a truth there that Rion just uncovered and articulated so well to the world. But it's a natural truth. And in other works I've done in the nonprofit world of partnering with governments, entities, and businesses, and it's incredibly powerful. And so to really demonstrate that this actually works, this actually is a better way to live. It's a win-win across the board. Whereas domination, there's always got to be losers. And most everyone ends up to be a loser, at some time, or maybe all the time, right? Only Donald Trump can be the winner.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think what you're saying is so really very important, and what is our responsibility to shifting ourselves from that? I know at S.A.R.A.H, we didn't have a blueprint. We didn't have a manual. I mean, we went looking to see if anybody was doing what we were doing, so we knew how to do it. We just came at this 100% organically. 24 years or 23 and a half years of women in circle operating in systems of partnership without even knowing what in the world we were doing. It's just our organic, natural. I've said this before. It's who we are. It's our blueprint, right? It's our innate. It's how we do things. It's so anything less than that is when we mask it, but it's there. It's not something we have to grow into. It's something we have to remove the weight from the shaft because it's there. So it's like a destination without distance. Of Course in Miracles says it's a destination without distance. It's there.
Yeah.
Have to start working at getting that cred out from in front of it.
Well, I think women operate much more naturally in that, and men, it's just been stomped out of them, kind of like, no, you got to be in charge. You got to kick some butt. You got to be the know-it-all. And that's just culture. And I think Rion really agrees with that. It's just what we've been taught, that, for example, violence is human nature. But you can lay out the case from the archaeological record that these, pre-domination societies, partnership societies, were very very peaceful and nonviolent by and large. And this is just something that happened pretty recently, depending on how you view 5,000 years. And that, we got to get over it, and we are. I think sometimes I think Donald Trump, God gave us Donald Trump so we could really see the worst of it. See, like, really be clear about where we don't want to go. It's like we haven't been getting it for 5,000 years. Like, okay, here's the guy that's going to finally show you what the hell this is really about. And maybe that's the
Well, we
good
thought
picture.
COVID was going to do it. We didn't learn from COVID, right? We thought COVID would be our great lesson, right? About the great pause. Let's just take care of, let Earth restore itself. Let's us go within, do our. I feel like Mother sent us to our room with COVID, and we still learn our lesson. We don't listen now. We listen. I think it's the last oxytocin push in the birth canal. I'm just going to hope for that. I remember talking to somebody, an Indigenous elder in 2012 at the Shift of the Ages. We were sitting in the Agape Spiritual Center in Los Angeles with Reverend Michael Beckwith. And I remember saying, okay, so the Shift of the Ages, things are going to get easier now. And big old belly laugh came. It's like, oh no, we've just begun. It's going to get worse before it gets better. So I'm sort of hoping that this is the dawn. We're at the crest,
For the low point, you have to hit a low point sometimes.
Yeah.
When you're sick, there's a certain low point you hit, and then suddenly you can tell, oh, I'm a little better. That's, so we're not a little better yet. But I have such a sense, because of the world that I work in, that there is this entire other thing going on amidst this train wreck that's in the outer world, kind of all these organizations and people weaving together and turning not only inward, but towards each other to work together. Even just as simple things as media, to share events, to promote each other, to celebrate each other. And I don't know how big it is, but it's pretty big, because I'm in the middle of it. But I think that's the question: is how much can that grow, and how fast can that grow to become, the dominant paradigm, the new paradigm.
Yeah, I'm a big believer in trusting the flow and know that we're doing everything we can and that everything is happening because it has to. Like you said, here's this gift asking us to take a solid look at ourselves and the language we use and what is our, like Karuna said, what's our responsibility? And it really is a clarion call. It is a, a call, come to Jesus moment.
Yeah.
Yes, the Jewish girl said it. Yeah, it is. It's exactly what it is. Let's address, let's get real. Let's get real is what our slogan should be. Let's get real.
Yeah. Well, we're past the hour, and we were going to wrap up and go to open discussion, but I think we've had a wonderful open discussion. So
I'm so grateful for this call. Thank you.